Picture a civilization that flourished for centuries in the dense jungles of Central America, building towering pyramids, mapping the stars with astonishing accuracy, and developing a written language so complex it would take modern scholars decades to decipher. Then, almost as suddenly as they rose, the Maya vanished, leaving behind empty cities swallowed by vines and questions that have haunted historians for generations. What truly caused their disappearance? Was it warfare, famine, environmental collapse, or could something far more extraordinary have been at play? What if the Maya didn't just disappear, but instead left behind clues to a technology so advanced, so revolutionary, that we are only now beginning to grasp its implications? Consider this: their calendar was precise to within seconds over thousands of years. Their architectural alignments match celestial events with impossible accuracy, and their artwork hints at concepts that seem to echo modern scientific principles. Could these achievements stem from something beyond mere observation and tradition? A growing number of researchers are exploring a breathtaking possibility that the Maya might have developed a form of communication far ahead of its time, a system that didn't rely on runners or smoke signals but on the very fabric of reality itself. Imagine a network that allowed instant exchange of information across vast distances, something that sounds less like ancient innovation and more like science fiction. This is the heart of an extraordinary theory gaining traction among archaeologists, physicists, and historians alike: the idea of Mayan quantum communication. It's a concept that challenges everything we think we know about ancient technology and human potential. If true, it could rewrite history, offering not just an explanation for the Maya's sudden collapse, but also insights into a lost wisdom that might still hold relevance today. In this video, we're going to journey deep into the jungles of possibility, examining the evidence, the controversies, and the awe-inspiring implications of what the Maya may have known, and what we might still learn from their legacy. Join us as we uncover one of history's most tantalizing mysteries. To understand the sheer scale of their accomplishment, we need to step back and appreciate the world the Maya built. This wasn't a single, unified empire in the traditional sense, but rather a vibrant tapestry of independent city-states, often rivaling each other, yet sharing a common culture, religious beliefs, and that drive for intellectual advancement. Their story unfolds across a vast timeline, with their foundations being laid as far back as 2,000 years before the Common Era, and their classic period of greatest flourishing occurring between the years 250 and 900 of the Common Era. Their domain stretched across what is now southern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and parts of Honduras and El Salvador, a region of incredible diversity from dense, humid rainforests to highland valleys. Within this challenging environment, they engineered wonders: cities like Tikal, with its towering temples piercing the jungle canopy, Palenque with its exquisite sculptures and intricate aqueduct systems, and Chichen Itza with its colossal pyramid El Castillo, designed as a physical manifestation of their precise calendar. Each step of that pyramid totals 365, mirroring the solar year. But their architectural genius was merely the most visible tip of a profound intellectual iceberg. Their mathematical system was nothing short of revolutionary. While much of the world struggled with rudimentary counting, the Maya developed the concept of zero independently, a conceptual leap that is the bedrock of advanced mathematics and computing. They used a decimal system based on the number 20, and with it they could perform complex calculations that fueled their greatest passion, astronomy. Their observations of the heavens were breathtakingly accurate. They calculated the solar year to be more precise than the Gregorian calendar used in Europe at the time of their conquest. They tracked the complex cycles of Venus with minute precision, and their understanding of lunar cycles and eclipses was embedded into the very fabric of their society, dictating the timing of ceremonies, agriculture, and even warfare. This wasn't just stargazing, it was a highly sophisticated science, a relentless pursuit of cosmic order. They encoded this knowledge in their beautiful and complex hieroglyphic writing, one of the few fully developed writing systems in the ancient Americas, which we have only recently learned to read. So we are left with a compelling paradox, a civilization without the wheel for practical transport, without metal tools beyond simple ornaments, without any beast of burden, yet one that could chart the cosmos for millennia and erect monuments aligned to the solstices with laser-like accuracy. This gap between their apparent technological tools and their staggering intellectual output is the fertile ground where fascinating theories begin to take root. How did they achieve such precision? What underlying principles or lost methods did they possess that we are only now beginning to comprehend? When we try to understand how the Maya managed such a sprawling and intellectually synchronized civilization across formidable terrain, we have to start with the communication methods we know they used. The conventional view paints a picture of a society that was brilliantly adaptive, using every tool at its disposal to share information, commands, and culture. At the heart of this system was their hieroglyphic script, one of the most sophisticated writing systems ever created in the ancient world. Unlike simple pictographs, Mayan glyphs were a complex mix of logograms and syllabic signs, capable of conveying intricate historical records, astronomical data, and detailed mythological stories. Scribes, who held a revered position in society, would meticulously record these events on everything from towering stone stelae to accordion fold books made of beaten bark paper known as codices. This wasn't just art, it was a durable, portable method of preserving and transmitting knowledge across generations and between powerful city-states. A royal court in Tikal could study the genealogical records of a dynasty in Kapan, creating a shared cultural and political framework that bound the civilization together despite its lack of a single central ruler. But writing alone couldn't manage the day-to-day logistics of an empire of the mind spread across a vast jungle. For that, the Maya engineered a physical network of connection, the Sakbiab. These were raised limestone causeways, often plastered white and gleaming in the sun, that cut arrows straight through the dense, unforgiving landscape. Some stretched for over 60 miles, connecting major ceremonial centers to outlying towns and resource areas. Think of them not as simple paths, but as the informational superhighways of their time. Along these smooth, maintained roads, goods would flow, but so would people and, most importantly, messages. This is where the Maya's human infrastructure came into play. A corps of messenger runners, trained from youth for speed and endurance, would traverse these Sakbiab, relaying vital information between rulers, news of a military threat, a shift in trade agreements, or an impending celestial event that required coordinated ritual observance could travel with remarkable speed, binding the separate city-states into a responsive and interconnected web. Yet for the Maya, communication transcended the purely practical. It was deeply woven into the spiritual fabric of their existence. The most powerful messages were often not carried by runners but were transmitted through grand, ceremonial spectacles. Elaborate public rituals, often involving dances, music, and ritual ball games, were not merely entertainment. They were a form of mass communication, reinforcing social hierarchies, religious beliefs, and communal identity. When a king ascended a pyramid temple to perform a bloodletting ceremony to commune with the ancestors, the message was clear and potent. His divine authority was reaffirmed, and the cosmic order was maintained. The smoke rising from incense burners, the specific arrangements of offerings, and the precise alignment of temples to capture the sun's light on a particular day, all of these were a language in themselves. They communicated with the gods, to be sure, but they also communicated a unified worldview to every citizen present. In this way, the Maya created a resilient and multi-layered communication ecosystem, using stone, paper, human athleticism, and profound ritual to maintain the cohesion of their world. This established system is what makes the more speculative theories so captivating, because they ask if this brilliant, known network was merely the visible part of a much deeper and more advanced technological iceberg. Even with this remarkably sophisticated system of runners, roads, and ritual, a number of modern researchers find themselves confronting a lingering puzzle. How could such precise astronomical data, down to the minute adjustments of a calendar tracking cycle spanning thousands of years, be so perfectly synchronized across city-states separated by treacherous, weeks-long journeys? How could architectural alignments at sites dozens of miles apart reflect such a unified and instantaneous understanding of a celestial event? The known methods, while impressive, still rely on the speed of a human foot on a stone road, a process inherently vulnerable to delay, error, and disruption. This has led a contingent of physicists, archaeologists, and forward-thinking historians to propose a theory so radical it seems to leap from the pages of science fiction directly into the ancient past. They suggest the Maya may have stumbled upon, or perhaps consciously developed, a principle that modern science is only just beginning to harness: the phenomenon of quantum communication. To grasp the sheer enormity of this idea, we first need to understand what quantum communication actually means in a modern context. At its core, it revolves around a bizarre property of the subatomic world known as quantum entanglement. Imagine two particles, perhaps two photons of light born from the same source. According to quantum physics, these particles can become entangled, their fates linked in such an intimate way that measuring the state of one particle, its spin, or its polarity instantly determines the state of the other, no matter how far apart they are. This connection appears to happen faster than the speed of light, bypassing the universal speed limit we thought was absolute. This isn't sending a signal through space. It's as if the two particles share a single existence, and a change to one is immediately reflected in its partner, defying our everyday notions of distance and time. Scientists today are racing to build networks based on this principle, dreaming of a future internet with unhackable, instantaneous communication across the globe or even between planets. The revolutionary theory posits that the Maya, through their profound and obsessive study of cosmic patterns, might have intuitively understood a facet of this interconnected reality. Their entire worldview was not one of separation, but of a living, breathing cosmos where everything was woven together: the movements of the stars, the growth of the corn, the destiny of a king, and the prayers of the people were all threads in the same sacred fabric. This wasn't just philosophy, it was a potential scientific framework. Proponents of the theory point to the Maya's intricate knowledge of crystal and mineral properties. They crafted astonishingly precise objects from jade, obsidian, and quartz, materials that modern quantum research often uses to manipulate and control particles. Quartz, in particular, is a piezoelectric crystal. It can transform mechanical pressure into electrical energy and vice versa, and some speculate it could play a role in focusing or amplifying certain quantum states. Could their ceremonial use of these crystals in headdresses, scepters, and burial offerings have been more than symbolic? Could it have been functional, part of a technology aimed at harnessing the universe's underlying connectedness? This concept fundamentally challenges the traditional archaeological narrative, which often views ancient achievements through the lens of gradual, mechanical innovation. It proposes a different path to advancement, one based on a deep, intuitive synthesis of astronomy, spirituality, and material science. The theory doesn't necessarily suggest the Maya had blinking boxes of wires and circuits, but rather that they might have developed a ritualized technology, a practiced method of using aligned minds, specific materials, and celestial timing to achieve a state of resonance with what they would have perceived as the divine web of existence, a web that we might now describe in terms of quantum fields. The implications are staggering. It could mean that a priest astronomer in Palenque didn't need to wait for a runner from Capon to confirm an eclipse prediction. in a moment of focused ceremony, that information might have been known, felt, or perceived simultaneously. Their sudden collapse, then, might not have been just a failure of crops or a victory of enemies, but a catastrophic loss of this delicate and advanced connection, a severing of the very network that held their intellectual world together. To truly appreciate the depth of this quantum theory, we must first ground ourselves in the sheer, undeniable brilliance of Mayan astronomy, for it is in these celestial observations that the most compelling evidence for their advanced understanding is found. Their achievements in this field are so precise, so methodical, that they defy easy explanation through conventional methods alone, pushing us to consider what other tools or insights they might have possessed. At the center of their cosmic order was their calendar system, a complex interweaving of multiple cycles that is arguably the most sophisticated ever created by an ancient culture. It wasn't just one calendar, but three working in perfect harmony. The first, the Hob, was a 365-day solar year, divided into 18 months of 20 days each, plus a short, unlucky period of 5 days. The second, the Tzolk'in, was a 260-day sacred cycle, formed by the combination of 20-day names with 13 numbers, which govern the timing of religious ceremonies and daily life. But the true masterpiece was the calendar round, the 52-year cycle created when these two shorter calendars realigned. And beyond that, they tracked the long count, a linear timeline that measured time in vast units, allowing them to place any event within a grand cosmic chronology stretching back over thousands of years. The famous end date of one of these cycles in the year 2012 captured the world's imagination, but the real wonder is the system's underlying mathematical elegance, its ability to seamlessly sync solar, lunar, and planetary rhythms into a single, coherent framework. This mathematical prowess was not theoretical. It was applied with breathtaking accuracy to the movements of the planets, particularly Venus. The Maya didn't just note Venus as a morning or evening star. They calculated its entire synodic period, the time it takes for the planet to return to the same position relative to the Sun and Earth, to an almost unbelievable degree of precision. Their calculated cycle was 584 days. Modern science, with all its telescopes and satellites, places the actual average at 583.92 days. This means that over the course of a single 584-day cycle, their calculation was off by a matter of hours, but the real shock emerges over the long term. Their calendar included correction factors, mechanisms to account for that tiny fractional difference. As a result, their prediction for Venus's position remained accurate to within 2 hours every 500 years. This isn't a margin of error that can be achieved by occasional naked eye observation. It implies centuries of meticulous, generation-spanning record-keeping and a profound grasp of advanced arithmetic to model celestial mechanics. Their understanding of other astronomical phenomena is equally staggering. They could predict solar eclipses, events that require an understanding of the complex cycles of the Moon's orbit. Their Dresden Codex, one of the few surviving bark paper books, contains detailed tables for tracking the lunar synodic month and predicting eclipses. To do this with any reliability, one must account for the inclination of the Moon's orbit and the points where it crosses the path of the Sun, concepts that are far from intuitive. The idea that they achieved this without lenses or precise optical instruments is a constant source of debate. How did they attain such fine-grained data? The conventional explanation points to generations of dedicated priest astronomers stationed in dark sky observatories like the Caracol at Chichen Itza, a structure with narrow window slits perfectly aligned to key astronomical events. They would have spent lifetimes charting the slow dance of the stars, passing their accumulated data down through oral tradition and hieroglyphic records. This method, while impressive, still feels strained when confronted with the minute accuracy of their results. The human eye, no matter how trained, has limits. The margin for error in tracking a planet's position over centuries should be far greater than 2 hours. This persistent gap between their tools and their output is the very crack through which more extraordinary ideas flow, suggesting that their observatories and rituals might have been components of a far more sophisticated and nuanced technology for perceiving cosmic order. This deep connection to cosmic rhythm finds a stunning parallel in the very stones the Maya left behind, not just in their alignment to the stars but in the sounds they produce. Stepping into a place like the main ball court at Chichen Itza, one is immediately struck by its immense scale and the sheer weight of history. But it's when you clap your hands that the true mystery reveals itself. The sound doesn't just echo, it transforms, returning from the towering stone walls not as a simple repetition, but as a distinct, piercing chirp that eerily resembles the call of the sacred Quetzal bird. This is no accident of construction. The precise angle and spacing of the massive parallel walls, along with the acoustically absorbent properties of the grassy field, create a perfect filter for sound, stripping away the lower frequencies of the clap and amplifying the higher harmonics to produce that specific symbolic echo. For the Maya, the Quetzal was a divine messenger, a creature that bridged the earthly realm and the heavens. The intentional engineering of this auditory phenomenon suggests they weren't just building monuments, they were creating interactive instruments designed to produce a sacred sound, a sonic symbol of communication with the spiritual world. This mastery of acoustics extends far beyond a single ball court. Throughout Mayan sites, researchers have identified numerous structures that function as sophisticated resonance chambers. At the palace at Palenque, specific corridors and rooms are designed to amplify sound in ways that defy simple explanation. A whisper uttered at one end of a gallery can be heard with perfect clarity at the other, while certain rooms seem to focus specific frequencies, creating a palpable vibration that can be felt in the bones as much as heard with the ears. The most compelling of these is the complex underneath the Temple of the Inscriptions, the burial place of the great ruler Pakal. Here, in the depths of the pyramid, the acoustics change dramatically. The stone walls, the still air, and the confined space create a unique sonic environment where sound behaves differently, becoming richer, fuller, and more resonant. This architectural genius leads us to a profound question. Were these spaces designed solely for dramatic ritual effect, or did they serve a more functional, technological purpose? Proponents of the quantum communication theory see these chambers not as auditoriums but as potential resonance devices. The core idea is that if the Maya had an intuitive grasp of a universal interconnectedness, what we might call a quantum field, then manipulating vibration could be the key to tapping into it. In modern physics, resonance is a fundamental principle. It's the phenomenon where one vibrating object can cause another to vibrate at the same frequency if they are tuned correctly, even if they are not physically connected. Think of a skilled singer shattering a wine glass by hitting precisely the right note. The sound waves transfer energy to the glass because they match its natural resonant frequency. Now apply this concept on a quantum scale. Some theories in quantum mechanics suggest that particles can be entrained or influenced through specific, coherent vibrations. If the Maya were using these specially designed chambers, perhaps with the aid of quartz crystals known for their piezoelectric properties, or through rhythmic chanting and drumming at precise frequencies, they might have been attempting to achieve a state of collective resonance. This wouldn't be about sending a voice message through the air, but about aligning consciousness or perception with the fundamental vibrations of the universe itself. A priest in a resonant chamber in Tikal, through focused ritual and sound, might achieve a harmonic state that allowed for a non-local exchange of information, an intuitive knowing with a counterpart in the similarly tuned chamber of a temple in Kapan. The sound itself wasn't the message, it was the tuning fork that brought the participants into alignment with the medium through which the message could flow. The bird-like echo at Chichen Itza then becomes more than a clever trick. it becomes a symbolic and perhaps functional key, a specific frequency that acted as a catalyst for opening a channel to what they perceived as the spirit world, a realm we might now describe in terms of quantum potentiality. This idea transforms their architecture from silent stone into a living, breathing technology, a fusion of spiritual intention and acoustic engineering that sought to harness the very music of the cosmos. This fascination with resonance and crystalline materials brings us to one of the most enigmatic and controversial artifacts connected to the Maya, the crystal skulls. These life-sized carvings, often made from pure, clear quartz, have captured the public imagination for over a century, touted by some as genuine ancient relics with mystical powers and dismissed by others as elaborate modern fakes. The most famous among them, the Mitchell Hedges skull, is renowned for its stunning detail and its detachable jawbone, a feat of carving that seems incredibly difficult to achieve with ancient tools. Mainstream archaeology, after extensive analysis, largely concludes that these objects are products of the 19th century, created with European rotary tools and sold to a hungry antiquities market. The romantic notion of a lost city yielding a perfect quartz skull is a powerful story, but the evidence points to a more recent origin. However, to dismiss the entire conversation here would be to miss a far more intriguing and substantive point. Even if the specific skulls in museums are not ancient, the profound and well-documented Mayan reverence for crystals, particularly quartz, opens a door to a technological possibility that is just as compelling. The Maya held crystals in the highest esteem, integrating them into their most sacred objects. They fashioned intricate ornaments, inlaid masks, and powerful ceremonial items from jade, obsidian, and quartz. High-status individuals were often buried with a piece of jade or a quartz crystal placed in their mouth, a practice believed to facilitate the soul's journey to the afterlife. This was more than simple adornment. It was a deep, symbolic connection to the essence of the earth and the heavens. Quartz, in particular, held a special place. Its clarity and ability to refract light linked it visually to the life-giving properties of water and the perceived clarity of divine vision. But what if this symbolic use was underpinned by an intuitive, functional understanding of the material's unique physical properties? This is where the theory moves from the realm of artifact controversy into the fascinating world of material science. Quartz is a piezoelectric crystal. This means that when you apply mechanical pressure or stress to it, squeezing it, striking it, or even subjecting it to sound vibrations, it generates a small electrical voltage. Conversely, when you apply an electrical current to it, it vibrates at a very precise frequency. This is not mystical speculation. It is a fundamental property of its crystalline structure, and it is the reason quartz is used in virtually every modern electronic device that requires precise timing. The quartz crystal in your wristwatch or smartphone vibrates at exactly 32,768 times per second when electricity is applied, providing the incredibly steady heartbeat that keeps perfect time. This property makes quartz an essential component for oscillators, filters, and frequency stabilizers in our most advanced technology. The theory posits that the Maya, through generations of working with and venerating this material, might have observed and learned to harness these subtle energetic properties within their own technological and ritual framework. Building on this, we can venture into even more speculative but theoretically grounded territory: the potential for crystalline structures to store and transmit information. In modern quantum computing research, certain crystal defects, like nitrogen vacancy centers in diamond, are being explored as potential qubits, the basic units of quantum information. The idea is that the incredibly stable and orderly lattice of a crystal can be used to hold quantum states, protecting them from the environmental interference that usually causes them to collapse. While the Maya certainly weren't building quantum computers, the concept that a crystalline structure could interact with and perhaps even imprint energy or information is not pure fantasy. If their worldview was indeed based on a fundamental vibrational interconnectedness of all things, as their acoustic architecture suggests, then a substance like quartz, which converts mechanical energy vibration into electrical energy and back again, would be the perfect mediator between the physical and the non-physical realms. A quartz crystal held during a ceremony in a resonating chamber might act as a transducer, a focal point, or even a kind of amplifier for the intended ritual. Imagine a scenario where such a crystal, carefully selected and ceremonially prepared, was used by a priest astronomer not as a radio but as a tuning device. The goal wouldn't be to hear a voice but to achieve a state of heightened shared perception. Through rhythmic chanting, drumming, or even silence in a space designed to hold specific frequencies, the piezoelectric properties of the quartz could be activated by the sound vibrations. This might create a subtle, localized energy field. Within this focused state, the theory suggests information that exists non-locally, like the entangled state of particles separated by distance, could become accessible to a trained mind. It transforms the crystal skull legend from a story about a magical talking artifact into a potent symbol for a much broader concept, that the Maya viewed crystals not as idols but as tools. They were instruments for harmonizing human consciousness with the fundamental frequencies of the universe, a technology for accessing the cosmic web of information they believed was available to those who knew how to listen. Whether any specific skull is real becomes almost irrelevant next to the powerful idea that their entire material culture might have been oriented toward understanding and utilizing these deep principles of resonance and connection. This architectural genius extended far beyond acoustics and into the very alignment of their world, revealing a civilization that saw itself as an active participant in the cosmos, not just an observer. To walk through a city like Tikal or Uxmal is to traverse a landscape intentionally woven into the fabric of the heavens. Their structures were not randomly placed. They were precisely oriented to capture the sun's rays on the equinoxes, to frame the rise of Venus at its most significant points in its cycle, and to mark the solstices with dramatic plays of light and shadow. The Pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza provides the most famous example. On the spring and autumn equinoxes, the setting sun casts a series of triangular shadows down the northern staircase, creating the undulating illusion of a massive serpent slithering down to earth to connect with its stone head at the base. This was more than a clever visual trick. It was a profound statement about the connection between the celestial and the terrestrial, a moment where the divine calendar was physically manifested in stone and light for all to witness. This celestial alignment was achieved through a sophisticated understanding of sacred geometry, a belief that certain mathematical ratios and shapes are inherently powerful and reflect the fundamental building blocks of the universe. The Maya embedded these principles into their city plans and temples. They frequently employed ratios like the golden ratio, approximately 1.618 to 1. A proportion found throughout nature, from the spiral of a nautilus shell to the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower. By incorporating this ratio into the proportions of their plazas, the height of their pyramids, and the spacing of their structures, they were essentially tuning their cities to a frequency they believed resonated with the natural order. A plaza designed with these proportions wasn't just a space for gathering. It was a harmonized field, an area where the energy of the earth and the cosmos could, in theory, interact more potently. The very layout of their cities often reflected their cosmology. The four cardinal directions were of paramount importance, each associated with a specific color, god, and tree holding up the sky. The center was the fifth direction, the axis mundi or world tree, a direct conduit between the underworld, the earthly realm, and the heavens. This concept was physically enacted in their architecture. Major temples were often arranged in groups of four around a central plaza, mirroring the four directions, with a central pyramid or structure representing the axis. This created a massive, three-dimensional mandala on the landscape, a geometric pattern designed to stabilize and focus spiritual energy. From above, these cities would have appeared as enormous ceremonial circuits, with processional causeways acting as energy channels connecting powerful nodal points, the temples themselves. This leads to the most speculative and fascinating application of this knowledge: the idea that this geometric patterning might have served a functional purpose in energy transfer or communication. If we entertain the quantum theory, we can view these cities not just as ceremonial centers but as potentially vast, sophisticated devices. The precise alignment to celestial bodies provided a timing mechanism, a way to synchronize activities with cosmic cycles. The geometric layouts and specific material choices, like the reflective limestone plaster covering their buildings, could have been intended to manipulate environmental energy. Some researchers point to studies showing that certain pyramid shapes can focus electromagnetic energy, and that crystalline structures like quartz, prevalent in their tools and ornaments, can amplify these effects. Imagine the entire city as a resonant circuit designed to be activated at a specific celestial moment. During a solstice or a Venus rise, with the sun's light hitting a temple facade at a precise angle, the entire geometric arrangement might achieve a state of coherence. The theory suggests that in such a moment, the focused intention of ritual participants through chant, meditation, or ceremony could use this prepared environment as a catalyst. The city's layout, its alignments, and its materials become the hardware. The ritual and the cosmic event provide the power and the timing mechanism. The goal wouldn't be to send a radio wave, but to achieve a synchronized state of consciousness across great distances, a shared knowing facilitated by a shared resonance with the cosmos. In this view, a priest in Palenque and one in Tikal, both observing the same Venus culmination from similarly aligned and geometrically tuned temples, might experience a non-local connection not because of a machine, but because their entire environment and consciousness were momentarily harmonized by a design that tapped into the universe's deepest patterns. Their sacred geometry then becomes the ultimate expression of their wisdom, a physical science of connection, written not in codexes but in the very stones of their world. But of all the surviving fragments of Mayan knowledge, one document stands apart as the most tantalizing and cryptic: the Dresden Codex. This ancient bark paper book, dating back to the 11th or 12th century, is a masterpiece of pre-Columbian intellectualism, a fragile survivor that somehow made its way to the library of Dresden, Germany, centuries later. To the untrained eye, its pages are a beautiful chaos of intricate glyphs, haunting deities, and complex numerical tables. But to those who study it, it reveals the mind of a mathematical genius civilization. It contains their most precise Venus tables, their eclipse warning cycles, and their rituals tied to the rain god Chok. Yet, within these calibrated charts, some researchers see something more: patterns and symbols that seem to whisper of an understanding that goes far beyond simple astronomy, hinting at a language describing the very fabric of reality. The most famous and controversial section is the pages that depict the end of the world as the Maya understood it: a great flood unleashed from the jaws of a celestial serpent. But surrounding this apocalyptic imagery are sequences of numbers and symbols that have fueled modern speculation. Certain arrangements of dots and bars, which constitute Mayan numerals, are grouped in ways that don't seem to correspond to any straightforward astronomical count. Instead, they appear in recursive, repeating patterns that some mathematicians argue resemble fractals or complex algorithms. Fractals, for those unfamiliar, are infinitely complex patterns that are self-similar across different scales. Think of a snowflake, a coastline, or a fern leaf structures that look similar whether you zoom in or zoom out. This is a mathematical concept that wasn't formally defined in Western science until the 1970s. The suggestion that the Maya might have been playing with these ideas 1,000 years ago is staggering. Could these patterns be merely artistic, or do they represent a deliberate attempt to model the recursive, nested nature of the cosmos they believed in? Then there are the symbols themselves. Interwoven with the numbers and deities are intricate geometric designs that some observers have noted bear a striking, albeit superficial, resemblance to modern circuit diagrams. They feature precise loops, parallel lines, and interconnected nodes that stand out from the more fluid artistic depictions. Mainstream archaeology interprets these as stylized representations of ceremonial objects, altars, or even symbolic maps of the underworld. However, for those exploring the quantum theory, they invite a more provocative question. What if these are not pictures of things, but diagrams of processes? What if they are schematic representations of energy flow, of resonance, or of a ritual technology designed to create a specific state? The parallel is not meant to suggest the Maya had silicon chips, but rather that they might have developed a symbolic language to describe complex, non-physical systems, a language of connection and interaction that we are only now rediscovering through our own symbols for quantum states and energy transfer. This interpretation becomes even more compelling when we consider the Codex's infamous serpent numbers, a sequence where numerals are shown cascading from the mouth of a deity. Traditional epigraphers see this as a metaphorical representation of the divine utterance of time itself. But could there be a more literal, physical interpretation? In various creation myths from around the world, a serpent or dragon is a symbol of primordial energy, of the chaotic, undifferentiated potential that exists before form. If the Maya held a similar view, this imagery might be describing the manifestation of order from chaos, the crystallization of mathematical certainty from a quantum foam of possibility. The numbers flowing from the serpent's mouth wouldn't just be counting days. They would be representing the very process of reality collapsing from a state of potential into a state of measurable fact. This aligns remarkably well with some interpretations of quantum mechanics, where the act of observation is what forces a probability wave to collapse into a definite particle. The Maya, in their unique way, might have been depicting a cosmological version of the observer effect, where the gods, through their divine speech, bring the tangible world into being. Ultimately, the Dresden Codex remains a Rorschach test of sorts. You can look at its pages and see only a sophisticated but ultimately ancient calendar system. Or you can look closer and see the ghost of a much grander theory, a user's manual for a technology of consciousness and connection, written in a language of numbers, symbols, and myth that we are still struggling to comprehend. It doesn't provide conclusive proof, but it opens a door to a breathtaking possibility that their greatest wisdom wasn't just in predicting the movements of planets, but in understanding the vibrational rules that underpin those movements, and that their sacred texts might hold the first fragile blueprints for a science we are only just beginning to imagine. This fascination with the city as a resonant device brings us to one of the most captivating theories connecting the Maya to the land itself. The idea that their sacred sites were not just aligned to the heavens, but were also deliberately placed upon powerful terrestrial energy lines. For centuries, cultures around the world have spoken of ley lines, invisible pathways of energy that crisscross the Earth's surface, often connecting ancient monuments and sites of spiritual significance. While the concept is often viewed with skepticism by mainstream science, a growing body of research is examining the possibility that these lines might correspond to very real, measurable geophysical phenomena, and that the Maya, with their profound attunement to the natural world, were master architects of this hidden geography. The theory proposes that these ley lines are not magical, but are instead manifestations of the Earth's own subtle energies. They are thought to be influenced by underground water flows, geological fault lines, and concentrations of specific minerals, all of which can create weak but detectable electromagnetic fields on the surface. Modern devices can measure these slight variations in the planet's magnetic field and electrical conductivity, and when researchers overlay these maps with the locations of major Mayan cities, a startling pattern often emerges. Sites of immense importance like Tikal, Palenque, and Calakmul frequently sit directly atop intersections of these measurable energetic anomalies. It's as if their architects chose these specific spots not just for access to water or defense, but because the very ground there was electrically and energetically active. This leads to a profound question. If these energy pathways exist, how might the Maya have perceived and utilized them? Without modern magnetometers, their methods of detection would have been far more intuitive. They might have used dowsing techniques with specialized rods, or perhaps they observed the behavior of animals and the unique growth patterns of certain plants that are sensitive to electromagnetic fields. But the theory goes beyond simple detection. It suggests that the Maya learned to harness this terrestrial energy, using their architecture to amplify and direct it. The materials they used are crucial to this idea. Their pyramids and temples were not built with simple rubble. They were faced with limestone blocks coated in a thick, bright white stucco made from burned and crushed limestone. This stucco, it turns out, is highly piezoelectric. Just like quartz crystal, when subjected to pressure or vibration, it can generate a small electrical charge. Now imagine the entire ceremonial center as a sophisticated energy circuit. The theory posits that the pyramid, acting as a massive capacitor, would draw upon the subtle electromagnetic energy rising from the ley line intersection below. The piezoelectric stucco coating, constantly subjected to the tiny vibrations of the earth and perhaps the rhythmic footsteps of ritual participants, would add its own charge to the system. This accumulated energy would then be focused upward towards the temple at the summit, a structure that often contained high concentrations of quartz-rich stone or actual crystals in its decoration. This temple could then act as a transmitter or a focal point, not for radio waves as we know them, but for a more subtle form of information transfer linked to consciousness itself. In this model, the ley line provides the power source, the pyramid and its stucco act as the amplifier, and the crystal-enhanced temple serves as the antenna. The purpose of this entire system, according to the most ambitious interpretations, was to facilitate a state of enhanced communication. It wasn't about sending verbal messages across the jungle, but about synchronizing the mental and spiritual states of individuals at different sites. When two cities were built on similarly powerful nodes within this planetary energy grid, and both were actively tuning their local energy fields through ritual and architecture, they might achieve a state of resonance. This resonant connection could allow for a form of intuitive or telepathic linkage, a shared knowing that transcended physical distance. A priest in a heightened state of awareness at the summit of an energized temple in Tikal might be able to tune into the same frequency as his counterpart in Palinc, receiving impressions, visions, or astronomical insights instantaneously. This wouldn't require understanding the physics of electromagnetism as we do. It would stem from a deep, empirical understanding that certain places on Earth possessed a palpable vitality that could be harnessed to connect human consciousness to the cosmos and to each other, turning the entire Yucatan Peninsula into a vast and interconnected spiritual network. This intricate relationship with the Earth's subtle energies and their architectural mastery of resonance leads us directly to the human element of the equation, the mind itself. For all the sophisticated technology of stone and crystal, the most vital component in this theoretical communication network may have been the consciousness of the initiated individual. The Maya were masters of inner space as much as they were of the outer cosmos, and they developed a profound toolkit of techniques designed to alter perception and achieve states of awareness far beyond the ordinary. Their goal was not escape from reality, but rather a deeper, more direct engagement with what they considered the true, layered nature of existence. To understand how quantum perception might have been possible, we must explore their ceremonial practices involving rhythm, sound, and sacred plants, practices that modern science is now beginning to understand can radically rewire human consciousness. Central to this was their use of repetitive, driving rhythm. In their most sacred ceremonies, the air would have been thick with the sound of wooden drums, the rasp of turtle shell rattles, and the deep call of conch shell trumpets. This wasn't merely background music, it was a targeted technology of the mind. Modern psychoacoustics, the study of how sound affects the human nervous system, has shown that repetitive drumming, particularly at a steady rhythm of around 4 to 8 beats per second, can directly influence brainwave patterns. This steady, percussive beat can act as an auditory driver, guiding the brain out of its normal bay to the state of everyday waking consciousness and into the alpha and theta states. These are the brainwave patterns associated with deep relaxation, meditation, heightened suggestibility, and vivid visual imagery. The constant sonic input essentially overwhelms the normal processing of the brain, quieting the internal narrative and allowing for a more receptive, intuitive state of awareness to emerge. For a Mayan priest, this state wasn't just about feeling relaxed. It was about preparing the mind to receive information that was normally filtered out by the busy, analytical brain. This auditory journey was often coupled with the controlled use of psychoactive substances, taken not for recreation but as sacred sacraments under strict ritual guidance. Enema rituals depicted vividly on painted vases show figures administering substances to one another to induce powerful visionary states. They brewed potent drinks from the bark of the balshay tree, and perhaps most significantly, they used substances like the powerful psychedelic found in certain morning glory seeds or the sacred mushroom, psilocybe cubensis, known to them as the flesh of the gods. Modern neuroscience has demonstrated that these psychedelics work primarily by disrupting the brain's default mode network DMN. The DMN is like the brain's CEO. It manages your sense of self, your ego, and the filter that decides what information from your senses is important enough to reach your conscious awareness. When this network is quieted by a psychedelic compound, the barriers between different parts of the brain break down. There is a surge of cross-communication, leading to synesthesia where one might hear colors or see sounds, a dissolution of the ego, and a profound feeling of interconnectedness with everything. This scientifically observed effect echoes the core tenets of the quantum communication theory. If the Maya believed that all things were fundamentally interconnected at a level beyond ordinary perception, then a substance that chemically induces the feeling and perception of that interconnectedness would be the ultimate key to unlocking it. The quieting of the default mode network can be thought of as removing the mental static that usually prevents us from perceiving a deeper, subtler layer of reality. In this hyper-connected, entropic brain state, the distinction between self and other, between here and there, begins to blur. A priest in this condition, positioned within a resonating chamber designed to amplify specific frequencies and perhaps holding a piezoelectric quartz crystal, might experience not just a subjective feeling of connection, but a genuine perceptive leap. Information that was always present in the quantum field, but normally inaccessible to the filtered brain, could potentially flood into awareness. An astronomical insight, a distant event, or a coordinated ritual practice could be perceived not as a thought, but as a direct download, a vision or a knowing that felt as real as any sensory input. We can see evidence of this search for connection in their most intense ceremonies, such as the vision quests depicted in the artwork of rulers like the aforementioned Pakal. These were not passive experiences, they were active journeys. A shaman or king would descend into a dark, confined space, a sweat bath or a specially built vision chamber emulating the journey into the underworld, the realm of the ancestors and the source of creation. There, in sensory-deprived darkness, with the rhythmic driving of drums and the chemical key of a sacrament unlocking their mind, they would seek audience with the gods. They didn't merely pray for answers, they journeyed to retrieve them. The visions they described of serpentine deities coiling from the earth, of ascending the world tree to converse with celestial beings, can be interpreted as the brain's beautiful, mythologically structured attempt to make sense of an indescribable experience of non-local consciousness. The serpent was a symbol of earth energy and wisdom. The world tree was the axis connecting all realms of existence. Their visionary geography maps perfectly onto the neuropsychological landscape of an altered state, where the very architecture of perception is rewired to experience the universe as an interconnected whole. In this context, their rituals appear not as superstition, but as a rigorous, repeatable protocol for shifting human consciousness into a mode where quantum information, if it exists as a perceptible layer of reality, could be directly accessed and understood. Yet for all its sophistication, this entire interconnected world, potentially humming with resonant energy and synchronized consciousness, came to a staggering and abrupt halt. Around the 9th century of the Common Era, the heart of the Maya world simply stopped beating. One by one, the great ceremonial centers of the classic period fell silent. In cities like Tikal, Palenque, and Capon, the practice of erecting carved stone stelae to mark the passage of time and the deeds of kings ceased entirely. The royal palaces were abandoned, the towering pyramids were left to the encroaching jungle, and the population of the southern lowlands collapsed in a dramatic depopulation that remains one of history's most enduring puzzles. The conventional explanations are well known and form a complex web of interlocking crises. A severe, prolonged drought that crippled agriculture and withered water reservoirs, intense warfare between rival city-states that drained resources and shattered social order, and perhaps a popular revolt against a ruling class whose divine authority evaporated when their prayers for rain. Unanswered, these factors undoubtedly played a role, creating a pressure cooker of social and environmental stress. But if we entertain the possibility that the Maya possessed a form of advanced, resonance-based communication, their collapse takes on an even more profound and tragic dimension. What if the downfall wasn't just a failure of crops or a victory of enemies, but a catastrophic failure of their connection, a severing of the very network that held their intellectual and spiritual world together? Consider the environmental angle through this new lens. A prolonged, multi-generational drought would have done more than just cause crop failure and thirst. It would have fundamentally altered the acoustic and energetic properties of the land. The earth itself would have become parched, brittle, and less conductive. The water tables that likely fed the subterranean energy flows, the theoretical ley lines, would have dropped dramatically, potentially diminishing or even severing those subtle terrestrial power sources. The piezoelectric stucco on their temples, reliant on environmental humidity to maintain its optimal properties, might have become less effective. The jungle, now brown and silent, would have lost its vibrant sonic backdrop, a crucial element in the complex symphony of natural frequencies the Maya may have tuned into. A drought, in this context, isn't just an ecological disaster. It's a systemic failure that degrades every component of a technology built on environmental resonance. The priests conducting their ceremonies might have found the connections growing weaker, the visions fainter, the intuitive knowing clouded by static. The cosmic internet, for lack of a better term, was experiencing a planet-wide outage, and the ruling class's power, derived from their role as intermediaries in that network, would have faded with the signal. This breakdown of connection would have exponentially amplified social strife. The intense warfare depicted in later murals shows a descent into brutal conflict, with kings depicted as bound captives ready for sacrifice. If the ruling elite's authority was predicated on their ability to communicate with the gods and predict celestial events for the people's benefit, a failure of that communication would be existential. When the king goes into his resonant chamber to learn the will of the gods and comes out with nothing but silence, his divine mandate vanishes. The intricate, synchronized rituals that required precise timing across cities would have become impossible to coordinate without their non-local connection, reducing the civilization to isolated and desperate pockets. The sacred trust between the ruler and the ruled, maintained for centuries by the perceived flow of divine information, would have shattered. The resulting chaos warfare, rebellion, the desecration of royal tombs could be seen not just as political upheaval, but as the violent rejection of a technology that had failed its people. The sophisticated network that once bound them together now became a source of fragmentation and distrust. This leads to the most haunting possibility of all, that the system wasn't just broken but was deliberately abandoned. Perhaps the most knowledgeable priests and keepers of this tradition, witnessing its degradation and the societal collapse it was causing, made a conscious choice to dismantle it. They might have seen this technology of connection as too dangerous, too vulnerable to the changing world, or too easily corrupted in the hands of desperate rulers waging war. The act of termination could have been a final, sacred duty. This might explain why the core areas were so completely and permanently abandoned. It wasn't just that people moved away, it was that the spiritual and technological heart of the land had been intentionally deactivated. They walked away from the power plants and transmitters, leaving the resonant chambers to be silenced by the vines and the crystalline technology to be buried and forgotten. The Maya didn't vanish, they underwent a radical transformation, migrating to new areas in the north and along the coasts, but they left the advanced, fragile core of their old world behind, perhaps believing that some knowledge, once its connection to the cosmos is lost, is too powerful to be used imperfectly. Their collapse, then, becomes a story not of a primitive people failing, but of an advanced civilization making a conscious choice to disconnect, preserving the essence of their culture by letting go of its most profound and perilous achievement. The parallels between the Maya's intricate worldview and the startling revelations of modern quantum physics are nothing short of breathtaking. While they certainly didn't have the mathematical language of Schrödinger's equation, their cosmology appears to have been built upon an intuitive grasp of reality's deepest, most counterintuitive principles that our own science is only now beginning to formalize. At the heart of both systems lies the radical idea of non-locality, the concept that objects can be instantaneously connected regardless of the vast distances separating them. For quantum physicists, this is demonstrated through the baffling phenomenon of entanglement, where two particles, once linked, can influence each other's states faster than the speed of light, as if space itself is an illusion. The Maya, in their own way, arrived at a remarkably similar conclusion. Their entire universe was a living, breathing entity they called Itzamnoch, a cosmic web where every star, every stone, every human action, and every divine thought was interwoven. A king performing a bloodletting ritual in Palenque wasn't just sending a message to the gods. In their view, he was directly affecting the fertility of the soil in a distant city and the outcome of a battle weeks away. This wasn't magic, it was their understanding of causality, a belief that everything is fundamentally and instantly connected in a cosmic dance of mutual influence. This leads us directly to the principle of entanglement, which quantum mechanics posits as a fundamental property of the universe. In the lab, scientists can create pairs of photons that remain linked, measure the spin of one as up, and its partner, even if it's on the other side of the galaxy, will instantly be found to have a spin of down. The Maya expressed this same inseparable connection through their sacred concept of the way, or co-essence. Every person, especially those of high status, was believed to share their soul with a specific animal spirit, a jaguar, a serpent, an owl. The fate of the human and the animal were entangled. An injury to one would manifest in the other, and the death of one meant the death of both. This wasn't a vague spiritual metaphor, but a concrete, lived reality for them. Their art is filled with visions of rulers transforming into their animal counterparts, depicting a literal blurring of the boundaries between individual consciousnesses. In a sense, their way spirit was their entangled particle, a non-local extension of their own being that defied the constraints of a single physical body, echoing the quantum truth that identity might not be as localized as our everyday experience suggests. Perhaps the most profound parallel lies in their conception of time and reality itself, which bears a striking resemblance to the quantum ideas of superposition and the observer effect. In quantum physics, a particle doesn't exist in a single, definite state until it is measured. Until that moment, it exists in a blur of all possible states simultaneously, a condition known as superposition. The Mayas' view of time shared this fluid, multi-layered quality. For them, time was not a linear arrow shooting from past to future. It was a cyclical, sacred substance that folded back on itself. Specific days and calendar cycles carried their own unique energy and identity. A day in the present wasn't just a point on a line. It was the remanifestation of that same day from a previous cycle, superposed with all the events and energies that had occurred on its previous iterations. The future was not an unwritten page but a landscape of potentialities, much like a probability wave in physics. The role of the priest astronomer was to act as the observer through meticulous calculation and powerful ritual. They would collapse this wave of possibilities, determining which potential future would solidify into the tangible reality for their people. Their rituals were, in effect, a ceremonial act of measurement, bringing a specific cosmic order into being. Finally, we can look at their overarching cosmology as a grand analog to quantum field theory. Modern physics describes the universe not as a collection of separate objects, but as a seething, dynamic ocean of energy, the quantum field, from which all particles and forces momentarily emerge and into which they subside. The Mayas' Itzamnoj is a near-perfect mythological counterpart. It was often depicted as a great two-headed reptilian creature spanning the sky and the earth, not as a distant god but as the very fabric of space itself, permeated with a sacred life force they called Kaya. This Kaya was present in everything: in blood, in jade, in wind, and in stone. It was the fundamental substrate of reality, an energized field from which all things, from a thought to a temple, derived their existence and their interconnected nature. Their constant rituals of offering and bloodletting were not merely petitions to distant gods. They were acts of maintaining and manipulating this field, adding energy to the system to keep reality stable and fertile. In both worldviews, the universe is fundamentally a unified, intelligent, and participatory field. The separation we perceive is an illusion, and the true nature of existence is a deeply interconnected, vibratory dance of energy and information, a concept the Maya wove into their art, their architecture, and their calendars millennia before our science provided the equations to describe it. This leads us to one of the most audacious and mind-bending theories attempting to explain the Mayas' architectural miracles, the idea that they might have mastered the art of acoustic levitation. The notion that sound, carefully focused and controlled, could be used to neutralize gravity and lift massive stone blocks seems to belong firmly in the realm of fantasy. Yet, when we look at the sheer impossibility of their construction projects, coupled with their demonstrable mastery of acoustics, the theory demands a closer look. How did they transport multi-ton limestone blocks through dense jungle without the wheel or draft animals, and then position them with a precision that rivals modern laser-guided machinery? The conventional answer involves immense human labor, wooden rollers, and ramps made of earth and rubble. But for some of their most precisely fitted structures, like the famous megalithic walls at sites in the highlands of Guatemala, even these methods seem inadequate. The stones are so perfectly cut and interlocked that not even a razor blade can fit between them, a feat that would be challenging even with today's technology. The seed of this idea is found woven into the fabric of their own mythology and the accounts of later cultures. While direct Mayan texts on construction techniques are lost, legends from the Andes, thousands of miles away, speak of a time when the great stones for their own impossible structures were made weightless by the sound of a sacred trumpet or drum. These stories, passed down through generations, describe the stones moving through the air as if they were floating, guided by the precise frequencies generated by the priests. The Hopi and Navajo peoples of North America also have traditions of their ancestors using sound and song to lift and position heavy materials. Though not Mayan themselves, these widespread and persistent legends point to a recurring theme across ancient Americas. That sound was not merely for communication or ceremony, but a tangible, physical force that could be harnessed for practical, monumental tasks. The most compelling evidence, however, lies in the stones themselves and the environment the Maya created. We've already explored how their ball courts and palaces were designed as sophisticated resonance chambers. Take this concept a step further and consider the physics of sound waves. Sound is not an ethereal concept. It is a physical pressure wave moving through a medium like air or stone. When two sound waves of the same frequency meet, they can create a phenomenon called a standing wave, where areas of high-pressure antinodes and areas of no-pressure nodes become fixed in space. Within these standing waves, small objects like water droplets or styrofoam pellets can be suspended, trapped in the nodes where the acoustic pressure counteracts the force of gravity. This is not speculation. It is a well-documented scientific principle used in modern labs for containerless processing of materials. The controversial leap is in scaling this effect up from suspending a tiny droplet to levitating a stone block weighing several tons. Proponents of the theory suggest the Maya may have discovered how to achieve this staggering scale. Imagine a construction site not filled with the grunts of laborers and the strain of ropes, but with the focused, overwhelming drone of hundreds of chanters, drummers, and horn players, all trained to produce a specific, pure frequency. They wouldn't be positioned randomly, but in a precise geometric arrangement around the stone to be moved, perhaps on a specially prepared resonant platform. The goal would be to create a powerful, coordinated standing wave. If the frequency was perfectly matched to the resonant frequency of the stone itself, the specific pitch at which it naturally vibrates, the energy transfer could be immense. At a high enough amplitude, the acoustic energy could theoretically create a force strong enough to counteract the stone's weight, making it effectively weightless or at least light enough for a small team to guide it effortlessly into place with minimal physical force. The perfect finish on the stones would not be an aesthetic choice but a necessary one. Any irregularity could disrupt the resonant frequency and cause the effect to fail. This would explain the otherwise baffling precision of their dry stone masonry. The stones weren't just cut to fit, they were tuned. Each block, carefully shaped to have its own specific resonant frequency, could then be acoustically matched to its neighbors, not just physically. The act of fitting them together would be the final step in a process that began with harmonic calibration. The eerie silence that often accompanies the movement of large objects in these legends might be a key detail. The sound frequencies required for such levitation would likely be at the very low end of the spectrum, infrasound, which is below the range of human hearing. While the priests and workers might feel it as a deep, unsettling vibration in their chests and bones, the process would be largely silent to the human ear, appearing as a form of magic to any observer. This theory, while far from proven, offers a breathtakingly elegant solution to the practical mysteries of Mayan construction, proposing that their greatest architectural achievements were not built with brute force, but with the finely tuned application of a forgotten science of sound. Beyond the resonance of stone and the focus of consciousness, the Maya engineered another network of astonishing complexity, one that wove through their entire civilization: water. Their relationship with this vital element was far more sophisticated than simple survival. In the challenging environment of the seasonal tropics, they became master hydraulic engineers, creating a labyrinth of canals, reservoirs, and underground cisterns known as choltons. These systems sustained massive populations in cities like Tikal, which boasted intricate paved causeways that channeled rainwater into vast, lined reservoirs holding millions of gallons. But what if this aquatic web served a dual purpose? A provocative theory suggests that these flowing waterways were not just channels for life-giving liquid, but potentially for information itself, tapping into a controversial scientific idea known as water memory. The concept of water memory was most famously and contentiously proposed by immunologist Jacques Benveniste in the 1980s. His experiments suggested that water could retain a memory of substances that had been dissolved in it, even after those substances were diluted to the point where not a single molecule remained. While his methodology was fiercely debated and his results largely dismissed by mainstream science, the core idea has persisted on the fringes of physics and biology. Modern variations of this theory speculate that the molecular structure of water, through the formation of hydrogen bonds, might be capable of storing and transmitting information in a way that resembles a liquid crystal. This isn't about water remembering a chemical, but about it potentially holding an imprint, a vibrational pattern, or a specific energetic signature that could be transferred over distance as the water flows. Now apply this speculative lens to the Maya. Their entire hydrological system was a dynamic, flowing network. Water collected from carefully angled plaster plazas would flow along stone-lined canals, swirl through reservoirs, and percolate through the earth into interconnected choltons. If water does possess any capacity for carrying informational imprints, then this constantly moving, mixing, and cycling medium would have been a perfect carrier. The theory posits that the Maya, with their profound observational skills, might have intuitively understood water as a living, responsive substance. Their rituals often involved offerings thrown into these sacred wells or cenotes, like the famous well of sacrifice at Chichen Itza. We typically interpret this as a spiritual offering to the rain god Chak, but a more technological interpretation wonders if they were actually programming the water. An offering of a specific jade ornament, a precisely shaped ceramic vessel, or even the blood of a ritual participant could, in theory, impart a unique vibrational signature into the water table. This informed water would then travel through the underground aquifers and man-made channels, potentially carrying that signature to distant parts of the city or even to other cities connected by the same geological watershed. This transforms their water management system from a piece of civil engineering into a potential biodynamic network. A ruler performing a specific ritual at the edge of a main reservoir in Tikal could be, in effect, broadcasting a signal. The water, imprinted with the intention and the specific vibrational frequency of that ceremony, would flow outward. A priest stationed at a distant temple, perhaps one with a special resonance chamber built over a key water channel, might have used his own trained perception to read the water, sensing a shift in its energy that signaled the successful completion of the ritual or the need for a coordinated response. This wouldn't be magic, it would be a form of natural technology, leveraging the purported properties of water as an information medium to create a slow, steady, and pervasive communication network that unified the city and its hinterlands in a shared, liquid consciousness. Their mastery of water wasn't just about storing rain, it might have been about harnessing the flow of information itself, turning the entire landscape into a vast, interactive circuit board. To truly grasp the depth of the Maya's potential understanding, we must turn to their greatest literary treasure, the Popol Vuh. This sacred text, often called the Mayan Bible, is far more than a simple creation myth. It is a sophisticated cosmological narrative that many researchers believe encodes a view of reality startlingly congruent with modern quantum theory. Within its poetic verses, we find not just stories of gods and heroes, but potentially a metaphorical language describing the mechanics of a universe built on interconnection and instantaneous communication. The narrative begins not with a physical creation, but with a state of primordial potentiality. The gods are alone in a silent, placid sea under a sky that is empty and static. There is no differentiation, no movement, no time, a description that hauntingly parallels the quantum vacuum state, a sea of fluctuating energy and virtual particles where nothing is yet manifest. The gods' first act is not to build but to speak their intent. Let it be emptied, they say, and let the water retire and make a void. This act of divine utterance of speaking reality into existence mirrors the quantum concept of the observer effect, where the act of measurement or intention collapses a wave of probabilities into a single, tangible outcome. The spoken word, a specific vibration, is the catalyst that begins the process of manifestation from the formless potential. This theme of vibration as the fundamental creative force continues with the appearance of the god Huracan, whose name translates to heart of the sky, but also signifies one leg, a possible metaphor for a single, oscillating frequency. Huracan's voice is the thunder, a powerful sonic vibration that shapes the world. The text describes how the earth itself arose from this primeval sea, much like foam, a fractal, self-similar structure emerging from chaos through the imposition of rhythm and sound. This is not a violent, explosive creation, but a process of coaxing order from potential through resonant frequency. The gods don't wield hammers, they use speech and song. They call upon the mountains to rise from the water, and the mountains obediently rise. They summon the trees and the vines, and they appear. This narrative suggests a universe that is responsive, not inert, a cosmos that answers to a specific harmonized call. In quantum terms, this resonates with the idea that the underlying field of reality vibrates at certain fundamental frequencies, and that by matching those frequencies through intention or action, one can influence the manifestation of physical form. The creation story in the Popol Vuh, therefore, can be read as a poetic instruction manual for interacting with a participatory universe, where knowledge of the correct words or vibrations grants the user a form of creative agency. The most compelling evidence for a quantum-informed world comes from the Popol Vuh's treatment of knowledge and communication. The gods' ultimate goal in creating humanity is explicitly stated. They want beings who will keep our days and, most importantly, call our names. This is not a request for worship, but a need for recognition and dialogue. The gods seek to create other conscious entities to interact with their creation, to complete the circuit of awareness. The first attempts fail precisely because these beings cannot properly communicate. The animals can only squawk and chatter, and the mudmen simply dissolve because they have no mind to speak. The successful humans made from maize are ultimately those who can see, understand, and most significantly, speak back with clarity. This entire narrative arc emphasizes that the universe is structured for communication, and that consciousness is the essential ingredient for a stable reality. It aligns with the quantum interpretation that reality remains in a fluid state of potential until conscious observation gives it definite form. The Maya, through their myth, were expressing a similar truth, that a universe without conscious beings to perceive and communicate within it is incomplete and ultimately unstable. This concept finds its most dramatic expression in the adventures of the hero twins, Hunahpu and Xbalanque. Their entire journey through the underworld of Xibalba is a metaphor for navigating the non-local, probabilistic realm of quantum potential. The lords of Xibalba are tricksters who deal in illusions and false realities, much like the decoherence that prevents us from perceiving quantum superposition. The twins defeat them not through brute force, but through superior knowledge, cunning, and the ability to manipulate reality itself. Dying and being resurrected, transforming into animals, and even convincing the lords to sacrifice themselves in a classic act of quantum trickery where the observer is fooled by the act of observation. After their victory, the twins do not simply retire, they ascend to the sky to become the sun and the moon. Crucially, the text states that before they left, they instructed their family, promising that they would also hear their prayers and words. "You will call upon us and we will hear you," they said. This establishes a permanent, instantaneous communication link between the earthly and the celestial realms. The twins, now celestial bodies, are everywhere at once, capable of receiving communication from any point on Earth simultaneously, a perfect metaphor for the non-local connectivity of entangled particles. A prayer uttered anywhere is instantly heard because the hearer is not in a single location, but is a fundamental part of the interconnected cosmic field. Finally, the Mayan concept of time itself, as revealed in the Popol Vuh, shatters our linear perception and offers a view that is profoundly multidimensional. For the Maya, time was not a river flowing in one direction. It was a complex, layered substance. The text is filled with events that are not isolated incidents but echoes of previous occurrences across vast cycles. The hero twins reenact the journey of their father and uncle, 1 Hunahpu and 7 Hunahpu, who failed in the underworld. Their story is not a new one, but the successful iteration of a pattern that exists across time. The calendar was not just a way to mark the days, it was a map of these recurring energetic qualities. Each day had a specific identity, a cargo of meaning that it carried from its previous manifestations. A day in the present was superposed with all its past iterations, and a skilled daykeeper could tap into that reservoir of information. This is a stunningly accurate metaphor for the quantum concept of a block universe where all of time, past, present, and future, is theorized to exist simultaneously. From a higher dimensional perspective, every moment is always accessible. The Maya, through their rituals and their calendar, were essentially developing a technology to navigate this block universe, to tune in to specific moments across the temporal spectrum and access the information inherent in them. The Popol Vuh, therefore, is not an ancient story frozen in the past. It is a dynamic, multidimensional map of a conscious, communicative universe, suggesting that the Maya's greatest technology was not one of stones and sound, but of time and mind. A fascinating and deeply unsettling possibility emerges when we look beyond Earth for a catalyst behind the Maya's sudden silence. What if the collapse of their sophisticated network wasn't caused by internal strife or even a local drought, but by a cataclysm from the sun itself? A growing body of scientific evidence points to a period of intense solar activity around the 9th century, precisely when the Maya heartland was abandoned. Ice cores drilled from Greenland and Antarctica contain a telling record of our planet's history, and within these frozen layers, scientists have identified a significant spike in isotopes of beryllium-10 and carbon-14 around the year 775 of the Common Era. These rare isotopes are created when highly energetic particles from deep space, called cosmic rays, strike our atmosphere. Normally, the sun's magnetic field and solar wind act as a protective shield, deflecting these rays away from Earth. But during periods of weakened solar activity, when this shield falters, more cosmic rays can get through, leading to higher levels of these isotopes in the ice. Intriguingly, a second, even more pronounced spike appears in the records around the year 994. This suggests our sun was experiencing a period of extreme volatility, a time of massive solar storms and coronal mass ejections that would have hurled unimaginable amounts of charged particles directly at Earth. For a civilization potentially reliant on the subtle balance of Earth's own magnetic and energetic fields, such a solar onslaught would have been nothing short of apocalyptic. A massive coronal mass ejection striking our planet's magnetosphere would have triggered a geomagnetic storm of unprecedented scale. We have a chillingly modern example of what a smaller event can do, the Carrington event of 1859, a solar storm that caused telegraph systems across Europe and North America to fail, with operators receiving severe shocks and pylons throwing sparks. That event was orders of magnitude smaller than what the ice core data suggests occurred in the 9th and 10th centuries. The effect on the Maya's hypothesized resonant network would have been catastrophic. The delicate, localized electromagnetic fields they may have been harnessing from ley lines would have been utterly overwhelmed and scrambled by the incoming solar tempest. The piezoelectric charge building in their stuccoed pyramids would have been lost in a deafening roar of atmospheric static. Imagine their entire system, finely tuned to the whisper of the Earth's natural frequencies, suddenly being blasted by a cosmic hurricane of noise. Their quantum channel, if it existed, would have experienced the ultimate denial of service attack from the cosmos itself. This solar disruption would have had a devastating secondary effect, a complete collapse of their agricultural foundation. The same geomagnetic storms that disrupt energy fields also dramatically alter weather patterns. The influx of charged particles can seed clouds and disrupt established climate systems, potentially leading to severe and prolonged drought. This provides a direct scientific link between the cosmic event and the conventional explanation of climate change. The solar flares wouldn't have just silenced their communication, they would have triggered the very environmental catastrophe that made their cities unsustainable. The ruling class, whose authority was derived from their ability to predict the rains and maintain cosmic order through their technology, would have been faced with an impossible situation. Their predictions would have failed utterly as the natural cycles they depended on were thrown into chaos by the solar event. Their rituals, designed to harmonize with a stable cosmos, would have produced no rain, no connection, and no answers. The people would have seen this as a definitive sign that the gods had abandoned their rulers, shattering the sacred covenant that held their society together. The timing is almost too precise to ignore. The classic Maya collapse is most commonly dated between the years 800 and 950 of the Common Era. The ice core data reveals a major solar event in 775, which could have been the initial shock that began destabilizing their systems, weakening the resilience of their civilization. The even larger event around 994 could have been the final, decisive blow that ensured any attempts at recovery in the central lowlands would fail, driving the final remnants of the population to seek new beginnings in the north and along the coast. This theory doesn't discard the other explanations for the collapse: warfare, drought, social revolt, but rather subsumes them under a larger cosmic trigger. The solar flare becomes the primordial cause, the single point of failure that set off a chain reaction of disaster, breaking the advanced technology that maintained order and thus unleashing all the human and environmental horrors that followed. It paints a picture of a brilliant civilization brought low not by its own failings, but by an invisible, unstoppable force from the heart of the very star they worshipped as a god. While the theories of solar storms and societal collapse paint a grand, tragic picture, to truly understand the Maya's potential technological reach, we must focus on the very materials they held most sacred, moving from the macrocosm of celestial disasters to the microcosm of the crystal lattice. Their fascination with jade stands as one of the most defining features of their culture, but to view it merely as a status symbol or a beautiful stone for jewelry is to miss a far deeper and more technologically intriguing possibility. For the Maya, jade, or yakskin as they called it, was far more than a precious green gem. It was the ultimate embodiment of life, vitality, and the very soul of the earth itself. Its value surpassed that of gold, and it was reserved for the most powerful rulers and the most significant rituals. Kings were buried with jade beads covering their faces and a single, perfect piece placed in their mouths to guide their souls into the afterlife. This profound reverence suggests they saw in jade a property that went far beyond its visual appeal, something that modern material science is only beginning to quantify and understand. To comprehend why jade was so special, we need to look at its unique molecular architecture. Jade is not a single mineral, but actually two distinct ones, jadate and nephrite. The Maya primarily prized jadate, a sodium and aluminum-rich pyroxene renowned for its incredible toughness and vibrant emerald green colors. This toughness comes from its complex crystalline structure, a dense, interlocking matrix of microscopic crystals that makes it exceptionally resistant to breaking. But beyond its physical durability, this same structure gives jade a remarkable capacity for energy conduction. Like quartz, high-quality jade exhibits strong piezoelectric properties. This means that when mechanical stress is applied to it, whether through carving, striking, or even the constant subtle pressure of being worn, it generates a small electrical charge. Conversely, when an electrical charge is applied, it vibrates at a very specific frequency. For a civilization deeply attuned to concepts of vibration and energy flow, a material that could literally convert physical force into electrical energy would have been seen as powerfully magical, a literal battery for spiritual force. This piezoelectric capability transforms our understanding of how jade objects were used. A jade pectoral worn over a king's heart wasn't just a badge of office. In this theoretical framework, it could have acted as a personal energy transducer. The king's own heartbeat and the rhythmic movement of his breathing would have provided a constant, subtle mechanical input, generating a low-level piezoelectric charge that kept the stone active. A jade scepter held in his hand during a ceremony wouldn't just be a symbol of power. It could have been a focused tool, its crystalline structure vibrating in sympathy with chants or drumbeats, amplifying and directing the intended energy. The famous jade mosaic funerary mask of King Pakal of Palenque takes on a new dimension under this light. Each piece of carefully cut jade, fitted perfectly together over his face, could have been intended to create a complete energy circuit, a resonant network designed to maintain the vibrational integrity of his soul on its journey, powered by the last fading energies of his own body. The most compelling application, however, lies in the potential for these jade objects to function in unison with their other technologies. Imagine a powerful priest-king standing in the resonant chamber of a pyramid, itself tuned to a specific terrestrial energy, lay and humming with the low-frequency drone of ritual chanting. In his hands, he holds a meticulously carved jade cylinder seal or a ceremonial bar. As the sound waves wash over him, they cause the piezoelectric jade in his grip to vibrate, generating a subtle, localized electrical field. This field could, in theory, interact with his own bioenergetic field, the electrical signals of his brain and nervous system. In this heightened state, achieved through ritual, rhythm, and perhaps psychoactive plants, his consciousness already teetering on the edge of normal perception, the jade object might act as a final amplifier or a tuning fork. It could sharpen his focus, stabilize the intended frequency, and enhance his ability to tune in to the non-local information field the Maya believed was the fabric of the cosmos. The jade doesn't transmit a message like a radio. Instead, it optimizes the human instrument for reception, turning the skilled practitioner into a living, breathing communication device with the sacred stone as his essential interface. Yet to fully grasp the potential of their water-based network, we must venture from the sunlit world into the sacred darkness of the cenotes themselves. These natural sinkholes, formed when limestone bedrock collapses to reveal the groundwater underneath, were far more than just practical water sources for the Maya. They were the most revered portals to the underworld, known as Xibalba. This was not a place of mere death, but a vast aquatic realm of ancestors, gods, and potent creative energy. The most famous, the sacred cenote at Chichen Itza, has yielded a treasure trove of ritual offerings, gold, jade, and unfortunately, human remains cast into its depths to appease the rain god Chak. But if we view these acts through a technological lens, a different interpretation emerges. The offerings weren't just gifts. They might have been a method of programming the water, imbuing the entire aquifer with a specific vibrational signature through the sacred properties of the objects and the intention behind the ritual. The theory of underwater communication hinges on a fascinating property of the subterranean environment these cenotes access. The extensive network of flooded caves and water-filled caverns that crisscrosses the Yucatan Peninsula creates a uniquely stable and shielded medium. Unlike surface water, which is subject to temperature fluctuations, evaporation, and electromagnetic interference from the atmosphere, this groundwater is remarkably isolated. It exists at a nearly constant temperature, is protected from external noise, and is often of exceptional clarity and purity. This pristine, stable aquatic environment is theorized to be an ideal medium for maintaining quantum coherence, the delicate state where particles remain entangled and their quantum information is preserved. In modern quantum computing, scientists go to incredible lengths to create similar conditions, using supercooled vacuums to shield qubits from environmental decoherence. The Maya, by tapping into these natural, shielded water tables, may have been accessing a ready-made, planet-scale medium perfectly suited for preserving subtle informational states. Water itself is the extraordinary element at the heart of this idea. Its unique molecular structure, with a slight positive charge on one end and a negative on the other, makes it highly responsive to electromagnetic fields and vibrational energies. The controversial concept of water memory, though not accepted by mainstream science, proposes that water can retain an imprint or informational signature of substances it has encountered. A more grounded scientific view acknowledges that water's structure is influenced by its environment. It can carry vibrational information through its molecular arrangements. For the Maya, who saw water as the very blood of the earth and the primary conduit to the spirit world, this responsiveness would have been a tangible, observable fact. They understood that water was alive with energy and information, a belief that modern material science is beginning to explore in new ways. The practical application could have been breathtakingly elegant. Imagine two major ceremonial centers like Chichen Itza and the distant city of Mayapan, both drawing from and making offerings into the same vast, interconnected aquifer. A significant ritual performed at the edge of the sacred cenote, involving specific chants, drumming frequencies, and the offering of a carefully chosen jade object, would impart a complex vibrational signature into the water. This signature wouldn't travel like a wave through the pipes of a modern water system. Instead, through the principle of quantum non-locality, the information could be instantaneously accessible anywhere within that connected water system. A priest astronomer in a chamber built over a cenote at Mayapan, perhaps in a state of heightened consciousness achieved through sensory deprivation or ritual, could then tune in to the water. By meditating upon it, or even by drinking water ritually drawn from the cenote, he might receive an intuitive impression, a vision, or a clear knowing of the event that had occurred miles away. The water acted less like a wire and more like a shared hard drive, a medium that was everywhere at once within the network, allowing for instantaneous information retrieval regardless of physical distance. This transforms our understanding of their relationship with these underwater portals. The dark, silent depths of a cenote were not a void to be feared, but a sacred interface. Descending into one, as depicted in some artistic scenes, was akin to plugging into the cosmic network. The stillness, the absence of light and surface sound, would have been the perfect environment for achieving the focused mental state required for this form of communication. It was a natural sensory deprivation chamber. In this silence, a practitioner could listen not with their ears, but with their entire being, perceiving the subtle shifts in the energy of the water that carried messages from other nodes in the network. Their underwater world was not a separate realm, but the foundational substrate of their most advanced technology, a living, flowing crystal that connected their world instantly and silently, turning the entire peninsula into a single, interconnected mind. Within the intricate tapestry of Mayan glyphs and sprawling murals, animals are far more than decorative elements. They are profound symbolic keys to a sophisticated understanding of reality. To decipher their art is to realize that the jaguar, the serpent, and the sacred bird were not just powerful spirits, but perhaps the best metaphors their world offered for describing the bizarre and counterintuitive behaviors of the quantum realm. a layer of existence they seemed to intuitively grasp. Their entire cosmology was built on the idea that the visible world was interpenetrated by an invisible, energetic one, and they used these animal avatars to give form to these elusive, foundational forces. Consider the jaguar, the undisputed lord of the Mayan underworld, a creature revered for its power, stealth, and most significantly, its seemingly magical ability to move between realms. The jaguar is the ultimate master of boundaries, effortlessly crossing from the deep forest into open spaces, from the world of the living into the realm of the spirits. This profound symbolism maps perfectly onto the quantum phenomenon known as tunneling. In our world, if you throw a ball at a wall, it bounces back. In the quantum world, a particle like an electron has a probability of simply appearing on the other side of a barrier, as if it didn't go over or around but passed through an impossible tunnel. It violates every classical law of physics, yet it is a verified, essential process that makes everything from nuclear fusion in stars to the chips in our computers possible. For the Maya, the jaguar was the living embodiment of this principle. A shaman adorned in jaguar pelts wasn't just dressing as a powerful predator. He was clothing himself in the concept of tunneling, preparing his consciousness to bypass the normal barriers of perception and move directly into the non-local, spiritual underworld to retrieve information or wisdom. The jaguar's spotted coat even resembles the dappled, probabilistic nature of quantum events, a pattern of here and there rather than a solid, definite path. Then there is the serpent, perhaps the most complex and recurring symbol in all of Mayan iconography. It is rarely depicted as a simple snake. Instead, it is a visionary serpent, often shown with its body undulating and its mouth gaping open, from which a god or an ancestor emerges. This is a powerful depiction of duality and transformation. The serpent is both a solid, physical creature coiled on the ground and a conduit for ethereal, spiritual energy. It embodies the concept of wave-particle duality, the core paradox of quantum mechanics where every particle also behaves like a spread-out wave, and it exists in a state of both possibilities until it is observed. The serpent's physical body represents the particle, the localized, definite point. The energy, the vision, or the deity erupting from its mouth represents the wave, the potential, the spread-out field of possibility. The act of a god emerging is the moment of collapse when a myriad of possibilities resolves into a single, manifest reality. The famed vision serpent accessed through bloodletting rituals was the mechanism for this collapse. A ruler would pierce his tongue or foreskin, and the resulting vision, the face of a god materializing from the serpent's mouth, was the tangible result of focusing intention and energy to bring a specific probability from the quantum field into the physical realm. Finally, we have the messengers, the vibrantly colored macaws, the swift hummingbirds, and most importantly, the ethereal quetzal. These birds soar high above the earthly realm, traversing vast distances with ease, connecting the canopy of the trees to the dome of the sky. In the Mayan worldview, birds were the primary carriers of messages between the human world and the heavens. This role finds a stunning parallel in the quantum idea of information carriers. In quantum systems, information isn't carried slowly like a letter. It is instantaneously shared between entangled particles across any distance. The birds in Mayan art, often shown speaking glyphs or diving from the mouth of the celestial serpent Itzamnoj, symbolize this non-local transfer of knowledge. They are not traveling the distance, they are manifesting the connection itself. The quetzal, with its iridescent green feathers that were more valuable than gold, was particularly sacred because its long, flowing tail feathers resembled the sweeping, graceful path of energy or information in motion. It was the living symbol of a flawless, instantaneous communication line to the divine, the perfect representation of quantum information leaping across the cosmos without traversing the space in between. By studying these animal symbols not as mere mythology but as a sophisticated scientific lexicon, we begin to see the Maya not as primitive stargazers, but as brilliant physicists who developed a unique and powerful language to describe the hidden architecture of the universe. Now, if we view their calendar not as a simple timekeeping device, but as the user interface for a vastly more complex system, a truly revolutionary theory comes into focus. Imagine that the intricate interlocking gears of the Mayan calendar were not just modeling time, but were actually modeling the behavior of the universe itself at its most fundamental level. This leads us to the breathtaking proposition that their entire calendrical system might have functioned as a form of quantum computer, a sophisticated machine for processing information about reality, not with silicon chips, but with the cyclical patterns of celestial bodies. To grasp this, we need to understand what a quantum computer does differently from a classical one. Our standard computers use bits which are either a 0 or a 1. A quantum computer uses qubits which can be a 0, a 1, or both simultaneously, a state called superposition. This allows it to perform vast numbers of calculations at once, exploring countless possibilities in parallel to find a solution to a problem that would take a classical computer millennia. The Mayan calendar, with its multiple cycles running concurrently and interacting with each other, mirrors this architecture with an uncanny precision. The 260-day Tzolk'in and the 365-day Hob weren't separate tracks. They were entangled, their combination creating a new, more complex cycle, the 52-year calendar round. This isn't just counting days, it's a form of parallel processing where the combination of cycles generates new informational states, much like qubits interacting in a quantum circuit. The true masterpiece, the long count, takes this concept into the stratosphere. It doesn't just count years, it measures time in vast, expanding units: the kin day, Yuanal 20 days, Tun 360 days, Katun 7, 200 days, and Baktun 144,000 days. This structure is profoundly algorithmic. It's a recursive function where each larger unit is a multiple of the smaller one, creating a self-similar fractal pattern across scale. This is the exact kind of mathematical structure used in advanced computing to handle complex, multi-variable problems. The theory suggests that each Baktun cycle didn't just represent a period of time, but a specific, major phase shift in the quantum state of the universe, a collective change in the probability field that the Maya were meticulously tracking. The much-discussed end of the 13th Baktun around the year 2012 wasn't a prophecy of doom, but the completion of a massive cosmic calculation, a reset point marking the transition to a new set of universal parameters. The evidence for this lies in the astonishing accuracy of their results. A classical computer, even with immense processing power, would still be limited by sequential calculation. But a system that leverages quantum principles like the Maya potentially did by aligning their cycles with actual planetary positions, could arrive at answers through a form of resonance. Their Venus table, precise to within 2 hours every 500 years, is less like a human calculation and more like a locked frequency. They found the harmonic resonance of the planet's cycle, the fundamental note it plays in the symphony of the solar system, and their calendar simply hummed along with it. This isn't computation in the way we understand it. It's a form of analog coherence where the device, the calendar, isn't solving an equation, but is itself a physical manifestation of the solution, perfectly attuned to the quantum vibrations of the cosmos it was designed to measure. This emerging field of study, known as archaeoacoustics, is now using sophisticated digital equipment to measure the sonic properties of these ancient structures, and the findings are nothing short of extraordinary. Researchers like acoustic engineer David Lubman have used modern recording devices to analyze the famous chirp of the Chichen Itza ball court, confirming that the echo is a deliberate psychoacoustic effect. The sound doesn't just mimic a bird, it's a precise downward glide in frequency that mirrors the call of the sacred Quetzal, a sound engineered into the stone through the exact angle and distance between the parallel walls. This wasn't an accidental byproduct of construction. It was a calculated design feature, an acoustic signature built into the very heart of their ceremonial space. But the discoveries go far beyond a single sound effect. At the Palace of Palenque, detailed acoustic mapping has revealed that certain passageways and rooms function as sophisticated waveguides. A whisper uttered in one specific corner of a gallery can be heard with perfect clarity over 30 meters away, while other chambers act as powerful resonators for specific frequencies, particularly those in the lower infrasound range. These are frequencies below the threshold of human hearing, but they are not imperceptible. Infrasound, typically between 1 and 20 Hz, is known to produce profound physical and psychological effects in humans, including feelings of awe, unease, and even trance-like states. It can vibrate not just the eardrum, but the entire body, creating a somatic experience that can alter consciousness. The Maya appear to have designed these spaces to generate and amplify these very frequencies, likely through the rhythmic pounding of drums or the blowing of conch shell trumpets during ceremonies, turning the entire building into a massive instrument for shaping human perception. The most startling research, however, centers on the resonant frequencies that these chambers produce. When scientists like Miriam Kohler have analyzed the sonic signatures of Andean structures like the Mayans' distant contemporaries at Chavin de Huanta, they've found that the primary resonant frequencies of the ceremonial chambers often fall between 4 and 8 Hz. This range is not arbitrary. It corresponds precisely to the theta brainwave state, the brainwave pattern associated with deep meditation, vivid imagery, hypnagogic states, and enhanced creativity. Theta waves are the gateway to the subconscious, the mental landscape where the normal boundaries of the self begin to soften. By building chambers that naturally amplified these frequencies, the Maya were essentially creating external technology to drive the brain into a specific, receptive mode of consciousness. It was a form of sonic entrainment, using the architecture itself as a tool to synchronize the brainwaves of ritual participants, preparing their minds for the reception of information or visionary experience. This leads us to the most theoretically ambitious edge of archaeoacoustic research, the potential link between these amplified sound frequencies and the quantum realm. The hypothesis is not that sound itself transmits quantum information, but that a highly coherent, resonant sound field could create the environmental conditions necessary for quantum effects to manifest and persist at a macroscopic scale. In laboratory settings, quantum coherence, the fragile state where particles remain entangled and their wave-like properties are dominant, is notoriously difficult to maintain. It requires extreme cold, a near-total vacuum, and perfect shielding from external interference to prevent a phenomenon called decoherence, where the quantum system collapses back into classical, predictable behavior. The theory proposes that the Maya might have stumbled upon a way to create a localized, room-sized environment that mimicked these isolating conditions, not with supercooled magnets but with sound. A powerfully resonant chamber filled with a standing wave of a pure, low frequency could create a zone of extraordinary stability within the air itself. The constant patterned pressure of the sound wave could theoretically act to shield the space from external electromagnetic noise and stabilize certain quantum processes. Within this organized field of vibration, the normal chaotic jostling of air molecules and energy fields would be momentarily stilled, creating a pocket of order where delicate quantum states, which usually only exist for fractions of a second in the subatomic world, might be sustained for longer periods and perhaps even influence human consciousness. When you combine this with the use of piezoelectric materials like quartz and jade within these chambers, the picture becomes even more compelling. A quartz crystal held by a priest in such a resonant environment would be constantly vibrating, generating its own subtle electrical field. This field could interact with the organized sound waves and the already altered brain states of the participants. In this heightened, coherent state, the distinction between the individual mind and the environment might become blurred. The brain, operating in a theta-dominant state, is exceptionally plastic and receptive. It's in this state that the intuitive, non-local perception associated with quantum entanglement, the feeling of knowing something distant or unseen, could theoretically become a tangible experience. The resonant chamber wasn't a radio for sending voices. It was a carefully engineered environment designed to optimize human beings for accessing a deeper layer of informational reality, using the physical force of sound to tune consciousness itself to the frequency of the cosmos. At the heart of the Mayan cosmos, beyond the cycles of the sun and the dance of Venus, lay a far more profound and mysterious focal point, the galactic center. This region, which we now know, is the rotational heart of our Milky Way galaxy, home to the supermassive black hole Sagittarius A, held an almost unimaginable significance for the Maya. Their long count calendar, that breathtakingly complex instrument of time, did not simply end in the year 2012. It completed a vast cycle of 13 backtons, an event they associated with a rare and powerful astronomical alignment, the winter solstice sun converging with this precise, dark rift in the center of the galaxy. For centuries, scholars and enthusiasts alike debated what this prophecy truly meant. Was it a prediction of doom, a spiritual awakening, or something else entirely? When we view this event through the lens of their potential quantum understanding, a startling new interpretation emerges. This galactic alignment may not have been about an earthly catastrophe, but a cosmic one, a momentary reconfiguration of the universe's informational fabric that the Maya were uniquely positioned to perceive and perhaps even utilize. To understand why the galactic center is so significant, we must first appreciate its sheer physical power. Sagittarius is a gravitational monstrosity with a mass over 4 million times that of our Sun. It warps the very fabric of space-time around it, creating a vortex of unimaginable energy. Surrounding it is a swirling accretion disk of superheated gas and dust, generating intense magnetic fields and blasting out radiation across the entire electromagnetic spectrum. From our modern astrophysical perspective, this is not a quiet place. It is the most energetically violent and active region in our entire galaxy. The Maya, of course, did not have telescopes capable of seeing this directly. Yet their astronomical observations, refined over millennia, allowed them to pinpoint the center of this galactic maelstrom with astonishing accuracy. They referred to it as the hole in the sky, the black road, or the womb of creation. These were not terms of emptiness, but of profound potential. They saw it as the source of all things, the cosmic birthplace and the ultimate destination for souls. This view aligns eerily well with our own scientific understanding of a black hole as a singularity, a point of infinite density where the normal laws of physics break down and anything becomes possible. This brings us to the core of a radical theory, that the Maya understood this galactic center not just as a spiritual concept, but as a physical engine capable of influencing quantum phenomena on a galactic scale. Modern theoretical physics speculates that the incredible gravitational and rotational forces around a supermassive black hole could create conditions that drastically affect quantum fields. The mind-bending gravity could stretch space-time itself, potentially creating filaments or tunnels in the quantum vacuum, the seething sea of virtual particles that makes up the fabric of reality. Some physicists propose that such an environment could enhance or stabilize quantum entanglement over vast distances, acting as a natural amplifier for quantum information. The intense energies might even ping the entire galactic quantum field, causing ripples or shifts in the baseline state of reality. If such effects are possible, then the precise alignment of our Sun with this galactic powerhouse would have been a moment of unique cosmic significance, a time when the barrier between the quantum potential and the physical world became exceptionally thin. The Maya, with their civilization-wide focus on resonance and precise timing, may have been preparing to harness this event. Their entire ritual calendar, with its culmination on that winter solstice, can be seen as a countdown to synchronize their consciousness with this cosmic pulse. The theory suggests that the rare alignment acted like a universal metronome, providing a momentary beat to which everything in the galaxy could entrain. For a civilization that built resonating chambers and used piezoelectric crystals to tune into subtle energies, this would have been the ultimate harmonic convergence. Imagine their priesthood stationed in pyramids specifically aligned to the solstice sun, performing ceremonies designed to resonate with this galactic frequency. Their goal may have been to achieve a collective state of consciousness so coherent, so perfectly in sync with the universe's rhythm, that they could access a non-local flow of information of unprecedented clarity. It would be like tuning a million radios to the same powerful, clear signal suddenly broadcast from the center of the galaxy. This leads to the most profound implication of the 2012 prophecy. Perhaps it was never about an ending, but about a missed opportunity for a new beginning. A fleeting chance to reboot or upgrade their entire quantum communication network on a galactic scale. The moment of alignment was a window, a portal of possibility. If their technology of connection was indeed based on delicate resonances with Earth's own subtle energies, as previous theories suggest, it would have been vulnerable to degradation over centuries. The galactic pulse could have offered a powerful external reset, a wave of cosmic energy to clear the static and re-synchronize the entire system. Their sudden decline centuries before this date could then be reinterpreted. Maybe they weren't waiting for the end of the world. Perhaps they were struggling to hold their fragile network together long enough to reach this galactic refresh point. Their collapse may have been the tragic story of a civilization that lost its connection to the cosmic web just before the moment they needed it most, leaving their greatest prophecy as a silent monument to a potential that was never realized. The galactic center, then, stands not as a symbol of doom, but as the ultimate symbol of their ambition, a testament to a people who didn't just look at the stars, but who sought to listen to the very heartbeat of the galaxy itself. What makes this entire exploration so electrifying is that modern science is now, quite accidentally, beginning to validate the very principles that might have underpinned Mayan science. We are building the first fragile prototypes of a quantum internet, a network that uses the spooky phenomenon of entanglement to send information securely and instantly across any distance. The goal is to create a web of connection that is fundamentally unhackable, because any attempt to eavesdrop on an entangled signal would instantly break the delicate quantum link, alerting the users. Researchers are using crystals, often synthetic ones like those doped with rare earth elements, to act as quantum memory devices, storing entangled states until they are needed. They are engineering systems that rely on perfect synchronization and precise frequencies to maintain quantum coherence. If you were to describe this research to a time-traveling Mayan priest without using any modern jargon, their eyes might widen in recognition. They might point to their own use of natural crystals, their sacred groves acting as resonant chambers, and their celestial calendars providing the perfect synchronization, and say, yes, we were building that. The parallels extend into the very architecture of information. Our quantum networks rely on a concept called quantum repeaters stations placed at intervals to refresh and extend the range of entangled particles, preventing the signal from degrading. Now look at a map of major Mayan cities. They aren't scattered randomly. They are often positioned at surprisingly regular intervals, connected by those arrow-straight Sakpiob causeways. Could these sites have functioned as nodes in a vast terrestrial network? Not to send classical messages, but to maintain the coherence of a resonant field. Each ceremonial center, with its tuned pyramid and potential energy source, could have acted as a kind of ancient quantum repeater, boosting and stabilizing whatever subtle connection they were harnessing across the challenging jungle terrain. The Sakpiob themselves, those gleaming white roads, might have served a purpose beyond physical travel. Some researchers have speculated that their limestone composition, potentially piezoelectric, could have conducted or focused energy, acting as literal information highways that physically link these powerful nodal points. Perhaps the most stunning validation comes from a field known as quantum biology. Scientists are only beginning to discover that nature itself uses quantum mechanics in everyday processes. Photosynthesis in plants relies on quantum effects to transfer energy with near 100% efficiency. Birds navigate using magnetoception, a sense that may involve entangled particles in their eyes, allowing them to literally see the Earth's magnetic field. The Mayas' entire worldview was one of deep, sacred ecology. They believed that animals, plants, and even stones possessed consciousness and were part of a communicative web. Their reverence for the Quetzal bird or the jaguar wasn't just symbolic. It may have been based on an empirical, observed truth that these creatures were naturally tuned into the quantum undercurrents of reality in ways that humans had to achieve through ritual and technology. Our cutting-edge science is now suggesting they may have been right all along, that the living world is already performing the quantum operations we are struggling to engineer in our sterile labs. This isn't to say the Maya had fiber optic cables or supercooled processors. Their technology was almost certainly bioenergetic and psychoacoustic, a fusion of architecture, astronomy, and altered states of consciousness. But the underlying principles they seem to have explored, non-locality, entanglement, resonance, and the use of crystalline structures, are the exact same principles that form the bedrock of our 21st century quantum revolution. We are arriving at the same destination from a different direction, using silicon and superconductors instead of stone and stucco. This convergence is what makes their legacy so profoundly relevant. It suggests that there might be multiple paths to technological advancement, and that a deep, intuitive synthesis of mind, spirit, and material science can yield results as sophisticated as our own deductive, materialistic approach. The silent stones of the jungle are no longer just a monument to a lost culture. They are beginning to look like the ruins of a lost branch of physics, one we are only now rediscovering. As we stand amidst the silent, vine-choked ruins of their great cities, the cumulative weight of the evidence invites a profound shift in perspective. We are left not with a collection of disparate mysteries, but with a converging pattern of clues that point toward a revolutionary possibility. The impossible precision of their astronomy, the sophisticated acoustic engineering of their temples, their sacred use of piezoelectric crystals, and their profound cosmological narratives all weave together into a compelling tapestry. This isn't merely a story of a clever ancient culture. It is a potential glimpse into a wholly different paradigm of technology, one built not on mechanics and combustion, but on resonance, consciousness, and a deep intuitive understanding of the universe's interconnected fabric. The theory of Mayan quantum communication, once dismissed as pure fantasy, now emerges as a powerful framework that elegantly explains the gaps left by conventional archaeology, suggesting their greatest achievements were not just intellectual but technological in a way we are only beginning to comprehend. This revelation has the potential to fundamentally revolutionize our understanding of human history and the very trajectory of civilization itself. For centuries, we have measured progress on a linear scale, from stone tools to bronze, from iron to silicon, viewing history as a steady, upward climb. The Maya disrupt this narrative entirely. They present us with the stunning possibility of a parallel path to advancement, a technology of the mind and the spirit, a science of synergy with the natural world rather than dominance over it. Their sudden collapse may not signify a failure, but a conscious or forced abandonment of a system too delicate, too advanced, or too dangerous to maintain in a changing world. It forces us to ask the most humbling of questions. Could greatness be not just about what we build, but what we choose or are forced to leave behind? This redefines our search for lost civilizations. We may not be looking for rusted gears or crumbled engines, but for the subtle echoes of tuned frequencies and the weathered stones of resonant chambers, waiting for us to learn how to listen once more. And so, the jungles of Mesoamerica hold their breath, keeping secrets we have only just begun to sense. What other profound technologies lie buried, not in hidden chambers, but in plain sight, misunderstood because we lack the conceptual framework to recognize them? Could their intricate glyphs contain not just historical records, but schematics for devices that manipulate the fabric of reality? Are the remaining unexcavated mounds not simply more temples, but the remnants of vast, interconnected energy systems? The most thrilling chapter of this story is that it remains unfinished. Every new LiDAR scan revealing a lost city beneath the canopy, every fresh acoustic analysis of an ancient plaza, every re-examination of the Dresden Codex with this new lens brings us closer to a potential paradigm shift. We are on the precipice of a new kind of exploration, one that requires not just shovels and brushes, but quantum physicists, acoustic engineers, and an open-minded willingness to rewrite the textbooks. The silent stones of the Maya have waited for over a millennium for us to finally ask the right questions. Perhaps now we are ready to